Welcome, welcome. So, I am Dr. Patrice Berry. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and a lot of my training has been with children, teens, and families. So that was why I became a therapist was to be able to help children and families. The more that I did this work, I realized that the parents need some help too. And so I do work a lot with adults now as well because often what I realize is that I could work with a child for 45 minutes to an hour and things be better. And then the parent comes in, and if I don't work with that parent, if I can, that typically is what makes progress happen faster and things can go better. Yes, children need safe and stable parents. That's a thing. So today we're going to talk a little bit about family secrets, when to tell children or adults the truth, and that this is inspired by Kerry Washington and Kirk Franklin recently disclosing some very personal information. So, with Kirk Franklin, I actually received a whole bunch of followers from that video. So, thank you to everyone that's joining from that stream. But Kirk Franklin found out about his birth father, and it really came out of these rumors in the community. And I hear this all the time. And when somebody hears from somebody else versus hearing from their parent, because I think this information, if his mother had come to him and said, "Hey, there's a chance that who I thought was your father isn't," and that could have been a no judgment type of conversation, just, "Hey, I'm not sure," or like, "Ugh, there are these rumors, like, you should I support you going and checking that out." I don't know. But Kirk Franklin's mom was like, "No, there's no way this could be true. No way at all." If you haven't already seen the Kirk Franklin Father's Day, to me, it was triggering for parent wounds because his mother is very adamant that it's not that this man is not his father. And then also a lot of people have commented about Aunt Sandra. So that is Kirk Franklin's aunt. And at one point in the video, he says, "Hey, Sandra." And she's like, "Who?" And so that was her way of correcting that she wanted him to call her Aunt Sandra. And instead of just saying, like, "I prefer," but she kind of did it that way. It sounds like there's a lot that happens, and it was a lot. There's a lot in that family. There's a lot in that story. I also heard that, and I did not research this myself, that Kirk Franklin's birth father might actually be um, that he's some type of therapist or something, or that he works in, I don't know, substance abuse. I don't know. So people were saying that there might be a really good reason why he's so emotionally intelligent. When I do this work all the time, and there are people who are in my field that are not emotionally intelligent. Okay. So just because someone is a family therapist or a marriage therapist does not mean that they have a healthy marriage or that they apply the things that they teach others in their own life. That's something that I have to actively practice. That's why I seek consultation. I have my own therapist, all of those things, because it's really important that healers, that helpers, that they get their own help too. Welcome, welcome. Hey, Phoenix. Hey, Witness. Welcome, welcome. If y'all have questions as I'm talking, please let me know. With family secrets, I think it's important to tell children age appropriate information as soon as possible. And this comes from a personal place for me. So, all of my life, I knew that my parents were married. And then after I was born, that they weren't married anymore. And that my dad remarried, and that I have siblings. I have amazing siblings from my dad and my stepmom. I've always been close to my stepmom. I've grown up with my stepmom all of my life. I really love her, adore her. As a child, in my mind, not knowing the timeline of things, I made some assumptions that were incorrect. So my dad did not meet my stepmom until after him and my mother were legally divorced and all of that. Because in my mind, as a child, I was trying to connect dots of and the some of the dots I connected were incorrect. And so being able that's what children do. Children, if they don't know information, they try to make it make sense. And that really came up in Kerry Washington's story. So Kerry Washington, she just released a book. I have a picture of her book. It's available on Amazon. I don't have it in my Amazon bookstore just yet. If anybody reads it, please let me know. I will probably get the audiobook. I have a bunch of books in my list that I need to read first. And she's coming from it from a lived experience perspective, and sometimes when I listen to those as a therapist, it's hard for me to not think of it like therapy, like, for me to and even though she's talking about it from a place that's very healed, that's on the other side of it, as a therapist, it can be hard for me to listen to books like that personally. And so that's where if you have a lot of situations, like if you're not able to listen to it, I get it. Okay. I totally get it. She did do an interview on The Breakfast Club, and that interview was phenomenal. I would play clips, but they copyright my video. I did that for a different video and got copyright strikes. And so I'm just going to talk about my notes from that video. So 5 years ago, Kerry Washington, all of her life, she kind of felt different. She kind of felt like she wasn't enough and that there was this missing piece to her story. And all of her life, she thought that her father was her birth father. And 5 years ago, her family sat her down and they told her that she was conceived via a sperm donor, which is a lot more common now. So, because on the Breakfast Club interview, she talked about the fact that, oh, like nowadays, like some of her children go to school with people that were conceived by egg donor, by different, all of these by surrogate, all of these different things, that these are things that we openly talk about. But in the 70s, when her parents made this decision, because she found out in her like I think 39 or 40, she found out in her 40s that she was conceived via sperm donor. And um and that back in those days, like, it really was a revolutionary, it was a new thing. It wasn't something that was done, it wasn't really talked about, and so they never told her. And now she has questions about that other 50%, and she calls him her sperm donor or her donor. So I like to use the language that people use because her father is the father that raised her. That is how she views it. So when I work with individuals who are adopted, when I work with blended families, I always ask the question, what language do you use? Or sometimes in session, so a child might call a step parent mom or dad to the person, but in our session, they want to refer to them by a different name just so we can keep everybody straight. Or like we identify, okay, when you say mom, I know you're talking about this person. When you say mommy, I know this is this, or I know what language is okay for me to use in our sessions. And that really finding out this information and knowing it, because I think there was a part of her dad that he was afraid that this information would make her love him less. And it actually did the opposite. It actually made her love him more because she felt chosen. She felt, "Oh my gosh, like my parents wanted me so much that they took this extraordinary measure to make sure that I was here." And I thought that was because I've worked with adoptive families or people that the child thinks one person is their birth parent, but it's not. And we have to have a conversation. It's always my recommendation to tell kids as early as possible. So kids under a certain age, until kids know how babies are made, they don't know what birth father versus like they don't really, so they're not fully going to comprehend it, but they can know this is your the the parent that this is your birth father and this is the daddy that's raising you, or this is who this other person is, the mommy or whoever the other individual is, that other parent. That kids, they really can understand that. And I also see this with adoption, where that sometimes people try to withhold information about who adoptive parents are, or they try to cut off contact because they want to strengthen the bond within the adoptive family. And I've actually seen it weaken that bond withholding that information because the kid tries to make it make sense. And sometimes what they end up, so when I was a kid, the assumption I made was, oh, maybe somehow it was me. Maybe somehow I was the one that caused. And it wasn't. Like, it was my mom's decision. Like, she was, and she was actually grateful that my parents had tried to conceive for a while and weren't able to. I wasn't planned. And my mom was just very, very happy. And I look just like my dad. I'm not going to pull up a picture now, but oh my gosh, if y'all, you probably have to scroll down for a while. I have one over on my Instagram. I look just, anybody that's seen my mom and that thinks I look like my mom has never ever seen my dad. And I wonder if Kirk Franklin has had a similar experience because he looks so much like Mr. Hubbard. And it's a whole thing because sometimes withholding that information and keeping those, if they can safely have a relationship with with that other side of them, that often is what's best for kids. Now it's hard for the adults because the adults have to manage their emotions of, if I'm the adoptive mom, I might already feel in and of myself, and I don't believe this, but I might feel like I'm not the real parent, or I might already have some it might be hard for me to see, the child I'm raising, the child that I see as, and I don't think we should possess. So like the child that I'm taking care of and I'm raising, like, it could be hard for that adoptive parent to see their child with their birth parent, but remembering what's best for that child. I think that's incredibly important because what can happen when we don't take that approach is that my emotion as the adult can supersede what's best for that child, which is horrible for outcomes down the road. It often encourages sneakiness, I'll be honest, or what it does is it furthers that perception or assumption that that person isn't good enough. And it was so interesting to hear Kerry Washington's story and then also Kirk Franklin's story, both of them having so many just self-doubt and having all of these things. If you do watch the Breakfast Club interview, I will warn you there are trigger warnings for deep depression thoughts. Y'all know what I mean by that. There are also trigger warnings for ED, for disordered eating. And then, because Kerry Washington talks about having an unhealthy relationship with food, but that it wasn't about the food, it was about the inability to manage, stress and emotions and those things, and that it went deeper than just that, and that she was striving to be perfect. Did that pause? Can y'all see me okay? It looks paused on my end. Oh, no. I hope y'all can please let me know in the comments if y'all can still see me. Oh, no. Did something happen to my internet? Oh, no. Oh, no. Let me see. Okay, it's frozen. Let me see if we can fix this. So y'all can still hear me, y'all just can't see me. So y'all can still hear me? But the video is paused. It's so odd. I wonder if it's my camera. I might undo. I wonder if it's something with my camera. Thank y'all for hanging in there. Oh my gosh. Nope, I think it's the whole platform because I just unplugged my camera and it's still down. And so, but, um, wow, we are, and it's not letting me do anything with the settings. I think it's something with StreamYard. Let me see if I can come back. Just give me one moment to try to come back. Hopefully, this will work. I'm glad y'all can hear me. Let me know if y'all have questions about this topic as I try to work out my technical difficulties. Here we go. And I had like a special thing for that. And yeah, I think it's Chrome. Yep, Chrome is not working. I'm going to try to quit Chrome and come right back. I will be right back. There we go. That was so weird. Thank y'all for hanging in there. 14. Thank y'all for hanging in there. I switched off from the regular camera. I'll have to go in and edit that other information out. Let me know if y'all have questions. Um, I am so glad that everything still worked because that was not expected. I'm going to go in and edit that out for everybody else. Y'all were able to see all of that. Switch back to my other camera that cuts out all of my cups. Y'all get to see the real. See all these cups? Two of them are water, one of them is tea. I already had my coffee this morning. And so there we go. All right. That's what I get for streaming twice today. I don't even remember where I was. So the gist of it is really, really important for kids to know the truth. I think it helps deepen those relationships. And some quotes that I took from Kerry Washington's interview is that she wanted to let people know the truth and to tell her story, and that really there was a lot writing it all down, that that was very healing for her. And then now that she feels like she has this unconditional love and feels chosen and feels even closer to her dad. And I do think her knowing, I think it was hard for him because I think because she even talks about a joke that he made that because the results came back that there was 0.00001% that he was her birth father. And he was like, so there's a chance. And just that the grief that he likely feels, just because they were able to kind of pretend and they were able to talk about, you know, when she went into medical appointments and everything, they would present as though he was her birth father. And she does want to look for the donor, and then like once she has that information she'll decide does she reach out to the person if there are other, you know, like because that can open up a lot of doors. And as a therapist, when I'm working with people that are trying to give information to a child, so we've sometimes done this in session. So I've had clients that because of adoption trauma, because of past trauma, we really had to look at like telling them hard information in session, or that we scheduled a session right after them learning some difficult information. And almost every single time, I can't think of a single time that a child was told the truth in like in a way that we kind of discussed. Because, like I said, it has to be age appropriate. So if I'm talking with a 10-year-old, and hopefully I've told them earlier than 10, but if I now know, oh my gosh, I need to tell my 10, 11, 15-year-old, I need to give them this information. I still say the earlier the better, because sometimes when people find out information later on in life, they can feel like they've lived a lie. And it can make them distrust. I feel like that's what came up with Kirk Franklin. It made it harder for him, and this is my perception, it made it harder for him to trust his mom, and it made having a relationship with his mom even more difficult. And because I think he just wanted her to put what was best for him first, and I don't know that she could. Something that I've talked with a few people in session about this week, and so sometimes when I share those things, it's like, "Ooh, I should talk about that on my channel." That some people, and this was, I think TD Jakes went on Oprah and shared something like this, that some people, the amount of love they have to give is like they have a little cup. They have a little teacup. And then some people have like a big Bucky size, like they have a whole gallon size. Like they have a whole, this is the way they love. And so if this is how much love I have and I'm pouring into somebody that has a teacup, they might feel overwhelmed. They might feel like it's too much. They might be put off by that. And then if they pour it into me with their little teacup, I might feel like that wasn't enough. Like they're not, but they might be giving me all they have. And that's where, again, we talk about acceptance is an approval. And yet, sometimes when I try to get something out of somebody that they cannot give me, that sometimes that can just cause more suffering versus just knowing, okay, I know my relationship with this individual, it's never going to be what I want it to be. And I grieve that. I have every right to be upset about that. And yet, okay, this is where they are, and this is what my relationship with them looks like. And for some people, that means not having a relationship with that individual, not talking to them for that period of time. If I'm not able to if I'm not able to create an emotionally safe place for myself. I saw this video and I wanted to mention it. The fact that boundaries are not about asking somebody else to do something, it's about what I'm willing to do. And I've done, if you search the channel, I have a bunch of stuff on boundaries, that my boundaries are about me. So I'm not in relationship with people that yell at me. I don't do yelling. I don't. I don't do yelling. Interesting tones. Sometimes because sometimes I might, because of my own past stuff, I might hear things a certain way, or I might be sensitive to tones that sound critical. And so that's where sometimes I have to check, is that me or them? Because if it's them, it's something I can address with them. But if it's me, hmm, okay, I have to work on that. Me and my therapist have to work on that. But and in Kerry Washington's story, she talks about um, uh, just so there are some trigger warnings for some topics that can be difficult. And uh, and the thing that I want to close with is that, once again, that fact that when kids don't know, they try to fill in the blanks. And typically they do it in an inaccurate way that actually causes more harm and pain, or it's an overly romanticized way. So I've worked sometimes with kids who are adopted, and they imagine, like they're imagining, what their life might have been like if they had stayed with their birth family. And it's this like harmonious, this beautiful, this amazing thing. And as a therapist, I'm careful with that, because some people, that's a way that they cope. That's because then I want to see, how's their current environment. Are they creating this beautiful fanciful place because their current environment is difficult, because they're struggling in their current environment? Phoenix, Phoenix, yes, yes, yes. And so it was very, very brutal to watch the mom deny him over and over again. I also experienced it. So I think and this is my perception, I don't think she's emotionally mature. And some people were kind of talking about Kirk Franklin's birth dad, that, oh, like, how could he have not known? And it's like, if people listen to the documentary, I think his birth father, because his birth mom was about 15, I think his father was like 13 or 14 when Kirk Franklin was conceived. And so I don't think he ever, like, it just never came up. It never happened. Like, it just, so I didn't see that. I didn't have any negative feelings personally about Kirk Franklin's birth father, but it was so difficult. Um Thank y'all for hanging in there with the whole, as Fina called it, peekaboo situation. Y'all could hear me, but y'all just couldn't see me. I'm, like I said, I'm gonna edit that out of the live stream that everybody else gets to see. If y'all have topics that y'all would like to hear me talk about, I do still have that video for parents of LGBTQ or trans kids. I do have specifically for trans kids, because trans healthcare, like, I just want to clarify some things, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and there are lawmakers, I think, that don't even understand what all goes in to what people actually receive, what's actually available out there, and what most doctors are recommending or doing when it comes to that. And so I will definitely, I'm still working on that one. I think I'm gonna do a video on, so my anniversary is coming up 10 years, and my wedding, so I people probably thought my wedding was, like, really expensive, and I stayed in my budget. So, I wanna share some budget tips from a psychologist that can help you get through the wedding planning process, and these are just general tips. It's things I did. People don't have to do those things. It's just things I did that made the process a lot smoother, and it made it a lot easier. Weddings are s and if I could go back and do it again, I still would have wanted a wedding. I would've. I still would've wanted a wedding. Because sometimes my husband and I were like, "We coulda put, like, some money down on a house," or like, "Oh, like, we coulda had that." We still did have a really nice honeymoon that was gifted by family, but yeah. Alright. Thank you, Aurora Knight. I have experience from both sides, adopted 2 of my own birth children out. Yes, yep. Later adopted 2, wow, your foster children. Wow. And so for those first 2, so I work with the Adoption Kinship Network. And there is a lot of grief that's experienced by the birth parent that does make that decision, and that's what was safest. That's what was in that moment. It doesn't make it any less hard, because I think sometimes people try to, like, I don't know, like, I don't know. So a person that loses custody, that's, and then somebody that does sign over, that does relinquish custody, um, and then sometimes it's able to stay open. Sometimes people agree for it to be open, but adoptive parents have a lot of power. And when I say that, what I mean by that is that I've had people be in an open adoption, and then something happens and the adoptive parent, and this never, but I've seen it in some casework that I've reviewed, that the family changed their mind and decided for it to not be open anymore. Y'all know I cover trials and cases too. There's a case out of Jupiter, Florida that is, the father and mother, but I think the father's the one on trial right now, that created a room that he kept his it was like an 8 by 8 with a camera. Like, it's a very sad story. And I'll be watching that. If there's anything I can add from a mental health perspective, I will definitely add that. Uh the child had reactive attachment disorder, and also I think ADHD. And with attachment disorder, what they were doing is not what I would recommend as a treatment provider, because they were cutting off, like, the child further from everybody and further isolating the child in, like, a locked room. So the room locked from the outside. And I think the family's gonna say they were doing it for their own safety and all those things, but, like, it's just, those we have certain laws and things for a reason, and it's a bit of a mess. Rachel Ann, welcome, welcome. And if anybody ever wants to comment something, you don't want me to show it, just put in there that you don't want it shown. Um, uh, and and so Rachel Ann talked about the fact that some information came up about family, and that when you say your grandfather was burning, I'm wondering if that meant that your grandfather was upset by the information coming out. Let me see. Okay. All right. And so family history, things can come out in families that can be very, very, very and different people in the same family can react differently to that same information. So Kerry Washington's an only child. And if she had had other siblings, they might not have wanted her to release this information. They might have had feelings about it, but she's an only child, and so she made her decision and was very public with covering everything. Um, wow. So Aurora Night, I have a lot of compassion for people. I've worked with people that have not only lost custody, but also, like I said, relinquished custody. And the ones that lost it, they fought to keep it. And for whatever reason, things happened where they weren't able to, where the judge made the decision to terminate parental rights. In my state, if because termination of parental rights isn't the end, there's still a circuit court, so rights can be terminated in juvenile court, and then that can be appealed to circuit court. But if the circuit court also, um, denies, because I worked on I've worked on cases where it kept getting sent back to the juvenile court. The children typically stay in custody during that process, if it's determined that they're not safe enough to return home. But I really do. There are times that I think parents do the best they can, and then I try to come in and support if there's a gap between what the child needs and the parent is able to give. The parent is able to do. And even in my own life, like there was a time when I had to get myself back in therapy because I didn't feel like I could show up for my child in a way to be emotionally available in a way that I really needed to be. And so no parent's perfect, and we all have to make decisions that we think are best. I don't think there has to be shame with any of those decisions, and people may not always agree, but I think people do what they feel is best in those moments. And sometimes I've also worked with people that thought they were going to a type of clinic that would but they ended up in an adoption clinic, or they ended up in a faith-based clinic, and that was kind of because they were going in with a different intention, and they ended up just having to watch some really graphic things, and that was really, really triggering for them. And um and so I've also worked with people that across the gamut of situations and perspectives. As a young child, I didn't know all my mom's stuff. As I got older, she shared more and more, and it was nice to know that she was human too. And not in but, like, just that she wasn't perfect. Because I think sometimes people, especially children, at times can put their parents up on a pedestal, and it's like, everyone you make the decision that you think is best. I just want my child to know that if he's in a difficult spot, that he can always come for help or support, and I might have a boundary. So, like, if he did something wrong and he needs bail, mm, and he did something wrong, I don't know. I don't know. Now, I did warn my mom because I was involved in a few protests and things in college, and so I let my mom know, like, "Hey, just a heads up, I'm going to peacefully protest just in case, we don't have a permit, we don't have permission, just in case I get arrested, like, please just, answer my phone when I call." I never did get arrested or anything like that. Then nothing ever escalated, um, beyond just a peaceful situation, which was good, but it's a lot. Yes, and, Phoenix, you mentioned Brandy's channel. I was able to watch some of her coverage. Sounds like she is in Texas. Like, she is very, very Texas. I have family out in Texas. But that trial of that Jupiter father, I forget the name. Y'all know me in names. That's gonna be a difficult case. I think it started today. Well, I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. Bye.